The spring window of the college football transfer portal opens up Wednesday. As of Wednesday morning, here's a look at how Mizzou has been impacted by some departures so far, and then also some positions they might look to attack in this spring portal window. Missouri was predicted by 247 Sports to be one of the most active teams in this window, and there's certainly a few spots where you can look at and see they might want to add. But according to Eli Drinkwitz, they aren't necessarily going into this portal with a checklist like they do in the winter, more so just supplementing positions where they can and adjusting to some roster movement. So, with that, let's take a look at the 5 players that have entered the portal so far this spring, not counting Drew Pine, who is a graduate, so can use that transfer window anytime he chooses. So, first off, with Ja'Kai Lane and Eddie Kelly Jr. at edge rusher, overall, I think this Missouri edge group is still one of the deepest positions on this roster. I still think it's one of the best edge position groups in the entire SEC. But these losses shouldn't be overlooked. Eddie Kelly was going to be in the top half of that rotation, presumably. And Ja'Kai Lane, like we talked about in the latest episode of our All Things Mizzou podcast, really was a exciting project to look forward to years down the line, especially with all the veterans on that edge group. So Ja'Kai Lane probably in the waiting to take over the reins for that position. But overall, in this day and age in college athletics, how much can you really plan for development and plan for the future? So disappointing losses with both of them. But at the end of the day, it makes sense. You can't really ask too many questions as to why these players are leaving when there's only so many snaps that can go around in that deep edge room. At linebacker, Mekhi Bayer transferring after just spending the spring with the program. You almost feel a little bit bad for the guy just because of the situations that were out of his control that ended up kind of eliminating playing time from him. First off, he committed just around 2-3 weeks before Tristan Newson announced that he'd be returning, utilizing that additional year of eligibility he has after being a JUCO player. So that will spot gets filled. And then also Mike and really any other off-ball linebacker spot. You have Jeremiah Beasley and Nick Rodriguez having really good springs entering their second seasons. Josiah Trotter coming over from West Virginia. So with Bayer, I mean, I'm sure it's just as frustrating for him to have to only spend a spring with the program. But again, I think if Tristan Newson doesn't return, then he's looking at a whole lot different of a situation. Then Jamarian Wayne transfers out the cornerback position. He used to be a wide receiver and then switched things over to cornerback. That's been a successful route for Missouri players before, like Chris Abrams-Drain. Overall, I think this cornerback position could have better depth for Missouri. That was certainly a spot they looked to attack in the December window, and they got Stephen Hall from Washington State then. I think when you look at this, you have Drayden Norwood, obviously, Nick Deloach and Toriano Pride kind of switching there as well at boundary, and then you mostly have Dalen Carnell at star playing that slot cornerback role. So interested to see how guys like Cam Keys and Mark Manfred develop at slot, if those are going to be the main guys they rely on for depth at corner. But Jamarian Wayne, special teamer, losing that aspect of it, and losing depth at corner, which was already kind of I wouldn't say a weak position but one where they could use some more depth. And then finally, Talon Chandler transferring out of the program after 2 years with the team, former 3-star prospect and Missouri kid. Overall, again, it's not hard to see why Talon would look for other opportunities. I think it will be interesting to see how it shakes up the center rotation. Talon was taking backup center reps, so number 2 center reps during the spring, and that's obviously with the factor of Connor Tolson not being able to practice. So they had Dominic Gaitis, Talon Chandler, Tristan Wilson as a center rotation. And so if Chandler sticks around, I would think really even when Tolson returns to the lineup that Chandler might be the backup center because Gaitis will probably be competing for a spot at right guard. So if he wins that right guard spot, then what's kind of the domino effect at center? Does Chandler stay at that center if Tolson goes down again? Like there's so many questions with the interior of the offensive line and all the moving pieces with that. But again, for Chandler, it's not difficult to see why he looked for other opportunities. I think, again, like a lot of these other positions, though, they have some young guys on the interior of the offensive line that they can develop. Look for Logan Riker to play a big role with that. He'll probably also compete for that right guard spot there. So they have guys certainly on the interior of this offensive line. As far as what Mizzou might look to add in this period, I would certainly think interior of the defensive line. That's a position group that Eli Drinkwitz highlighted. You have Chris McClellan returning, and you have to feel very solid about him there as both a pass rusher and as a run defender. Marquise Graciel, you're taking a little bit of a gamble on, you could say, of being able to take that jump. But he's shown that ability. He's shown that potential. So the only reason it's a gamble is just because he hasn't taken on that big of a role before. But I think you should feel confident in that. And then after that, I think you have a lot of guys that have certain abilities. I really like Sterling Webb. But then I could absolutely see them, Sam Williams, maybe they're not really liking where he's at in his development, and some other guys like that. So I could see them adding there. Um, Other than that, though, again, there's no real position that sticks out to me as one where they need to add at this spring. Maybe there's some injuries we don't know about. They obviously know who's going to actually be entering the portal better than we do. Eli Drinkwitz said last week that he believes there's going to be about 8 guys that enter the portal for them. I don't know if that counts Drew Pine, but right now with the guys I mentioned, they're sitting at 5. So 2, maybe 3 round that range entering the portal as well. So we'll see how it all shakes up for Mizzou in the spring transfer portal window, but we'll have all the coverage for you over at Missouri Tigers on SI.